Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the ConvoTalk podcast. So, if you're new here, I'm Kaviru and I'm here with AJ. So, he's a conversational designer at ConvoGrid AI. And if you haven't listened to our first episode, we discussed about the role of conversational design in our previous one. So, moving forward in this episode, we want to talk about some of the way how AJ actually approach a business problem and how he creates a conversational marketing strategy for the business processes that he meets. So, and also one of the things that I have mentioned during our previous episode is that I'm trying to uh, go from a content strategist to a conversational designer. So there are some terminologies that also I have found during the last couple of weeks. So I think AJ can help me out there as well. So we can start from the first question that I have. So the first question is, how do you approach a business solution and create a conversational marketing strategy based on that? How do you make sure that you convey the business purpose to get more customers and revenue to these content creators or business uh, processes?
Yeah, so hello Kavri again. Yes, so first of all, what we need to do is we need to understand what the business is trying to do. Like without really having an idea about what the business is trying to do, it's not really feasible to make a chatbot because at the end of the day, the chatbot should align with what the business is seeking to do. So one thing that we do is, of course, as with any software project, you will have to have a requirement elicitation. So that's the process where you actually get the requirements and you understand it and you document it. So something similar but not exactly the same, something in a much smaller scale. So then we get what the business wants to do and we identify the potential sources that we can use. It could be the website, it could be videos that they have posted, it could be any content that they have posted, or it could be any internal information in the form of documents. Yeah, any of those sources, we identify what sources would work the best. And then we identify what type of a bot would work for this business. So we had to make sure that this bot aligns with the business's brand because the business can of course have a mascot and they may decide to make this mascot itself as the character that the user interacts with. So such a mascot will be very helpful and useful as well. Or you could have a generic as well. So it all depends on your tastes. But ideally, it's good if you have something like a mascot. For example, in ConvoGrid itself, we have something called Charity Owl. So that's like an owl conversational assistant. So it makes this cute owl noises when you communicate with him, something like that. So of course we had tube something called tube in YouTube. So that talks more like a robot. So it makes the robotic noises when you talk with it. Yeah. So one thing that's important is to understand what the business wants to do, and we should identify what sources are useful for this business, and then we should see how and when the bot needs to interact with the user. That in the sense, sometimes it's not just it should be proactive. That means the bot itself communicates, maybe through a welcome message, maybe through a prompt or something. Yeah. Maybe through a prompt or something. So this sort of thing is also very useful because then the user feels a more dynamic approach because then he feels that the bot is directly interacting with him without him necessarily having to interact first. So it may be something like when you visit the website or the software or whatever, the bot itself puts a message saying, hello, welcome back. What would you like to do today? Or maybe, hello, today there's a promotion. If you use this promo code, you'll get a discount of 5% in this store. Something like that. So that's sort of a advertising can also be done. So that way people get to know more about what they're trying to do. And in addition to that, a use case that we had with SLVlog actually is where they have their Patreon. So they want to drive users to Patreon. So whenever we post a Patreon content, we actually promote that to the website itself. So we put a welcome message and we promote that to the website itself. So it all depends on the use case at the end of the day, but that's sort of the flow that happens.
So I think I was planning on going to the terminology after a bit, but you mentioned the word use case. How do you define a use case in a? We can use actually Excel log as a main business process or the client, and as a use case, how do you find? Uh, how do you define it within that specific process?
Yeah, so when we talk about the use case in SLV, look, so what they want to do is they want to make it in much easier for them to actually find out where they have spoken about a specific content, because they have a lot of videos in their channel. So they have around 4 channels, and they also want to make it seamless. So for example, if a person asks a question in the SL Vlog news channel, they want it to be directed to a YouTube video that they have done in their YouTube channel. So that's sort of a context match across all of a common shared context across all of these bots is something that they're looking for. So this sort of a use case is what they have. So in this situation, in the news channel, what we do is we actually focus more towards providing daily updates. So that means you can communicate with this chatbot and ask for what happened today, but most likely it's yesterday. But yeah, you could actually ask what's happening, and then the bot is able to respond. So that sort of a use case is there for that bot. But moving on to the YouTube side, so if a user wants to find out about maybe if the user asks something about the latest gossip that's happening in Sri Lanka or something, he should be directed to the video where they spoke about that. That means it could be anything. So they should be directed to that. And apart from that, they have the pod talks where they have the podcasts. So even in that channel, we should be able to actually direct to the specific videos or the podcasts that they have mentioned something. And in the news website, sorry, in the main website, we should be able to actually direct them to the events and the movies and the shows that they do. And apart from that, it should, like I mentioned before, we should have the seamless context match across all of these things. So that means if a user chats with the YouTube bot, he should be able to be directed to the news bot if it's necessary. That sort of a thing. So then again, it depends. The use case can change. So some businesses may just want a simple chatbot in their website. Some people may just want a simple YouTube bot where people can ask and find videos. Some people may want something a bit more technical, maybe like e-learning. So where they want to be able to answer the students' queries about a specific study material. That sort of a thing. It all depends at the end of the day on the use case. So the use cases can vary, of course. So use cases are in general what you call a use case is why you're using this system. What type of users will you get from the system? So that sort of thing.
Yeah. So one of the other things I have is that if you think about 2020 or before 2020, chatbots used to be like very generic. They used to provide a specific, they used to give out a query and answer for that specific query, and that's all it could do. But nowadays, with natural language processing and everything, with LLMs, uh, we are doing so many marvelous things. So one of the main things that I want to know is how do you make your bots feel like more human like? Yeah, what is the process of doing that? I know that there are some things like you can use fine tuning, prompt engineering, those things. What is your approach when it comes to as a conversational designer to make these bots feel more human, feel more natural?
Yeah. So what makes each of us unique is our personality at the end of the day. Like each of us has our own unique personality, our own unique traits, our own unique behaviors. So what we essentially try to do is use prompt engineering. So prompt engineering is how we actually give a guidance to the bot to on some instructions to follow. So we actually create a personality for this bot. So we give them a sort of a persona. That's called. So each, even if you talk in user experience point of view, each user has its own persona. That means, and a user persona is something where you accumulate a large amount of users and you identify a common defining set of traits, which will be the ideal user for this system. So similarly, even the bot can have a persona. So the bot's persona will be something. So this bot's persona will be something like the bot has its own personality, and the bot's able to actually respond to the user queries, etc., using this personality. So this bot's personality can be in terms of the bot's name, the bot's type, what type of bot it is, how old it is. You could for example mention even that. You could mention how funny it is, what's the tone it uses, how it behaves, like behavior in the sense like if it's a robotic chatbot, it could make the robotic noises. If it's something like chatty owl, it makes owl noises. So something like that. And also you can make it a bit more human. If you want to make it like something like more of a human chatbot, you could make something like those sort of filler words which people use. You could of course ask the chatbot to make it talk like that. And I think a lot of people tried these doses when ChatGPT became popular, which is making the chat GPT respond more like a pirate. So those sort of things. You could actually do all of those things through prompt engineering. So that's sort of a way we actually create a personality for the bot and we assign that as the persona. So we create a prompt where we actually mention the personality, where we mention about what it should respond, how it should respond, and also we mention what it should not do. That means we don't want the bot to go outside its use case, right? We don't want the bot to, for example, if it's a news bot, yes, if it's a news bot, it shouldn't be able to actually book tickets for a plane or a show, right? It should only be able to direct towards news content. If it's something like an entertainment vlog bot, it should not really answer about world war or other current events in the world. World War is, of course, not a current event, but yeah, maybe future, maybe past. But that's beside the point. Yeah, but yeah, the idea is that we should actually keep it in line so that it doesn't hallucinate and go beyond what it's supposed to actually respond. Because when you try to over engineer this sort of thing, when you try to give too much of instructions, the bot may get confused and actually end up giving you a wrong answer. So we want to avoid that as well. So we want to make sure that the bot has a good personality. The bot knows what it's supposed to respond, how it's supposed to respond, and it knows what it is not supposed to respond as well. So those sort of things should be defined through prompt engineering, and then we have a bot that works.
So also another thing that I think goes with this prompt engineering is that back in the day we used flow mapping a lot. Like we used to do get the user's input and then map that input to an output. But with natural language process, now it has become easy compared to what it was. So how do you uh, how do you think the industry has changed from mapping all those user inputs? Oh, I think the correct word is intent. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, how do you think people have moved from that to what we do now with the natural language processing? And I also want to get your opinion on how you define a user intent as a word, as a term.
Yeah. So when we talk about how people used to do it before, so there are platforms like chatbot.com and all. Now even they also have actually improved a lot. So previously, yes, like you mentioned, we actually define the flow. You can still do that in voice flow and all as well. So where you actually you select, you mentioned the user intent. So user intent is what the user intends to do. You could call it. So you mentioned what the user intends to do and how the bot should respond for that intention. So what people previously used to do. Okay. Yeah. So what people try to do is call the intention, what the user is trying to do. So how the bot should respond is the response. So we map the response to the intention of the user. So what people used to do before is, for example, we actually previously that was a much simpler system. So that means you are constrained by the options that you have. So you definitely have to click those options that are on the screen. So you can't ask anything in advance to that. So for example, if it's maybe even the dialog bot, you just have see the bill information, make a complaint, those sort of options. You can't go anything beyond that. You just have to click that and then you'll get the suitable response. It's very robotic because in the end of the day, you don't have freedom to ask what you want to ask. So that sort of changed with the development, actually, you could call it. Because now with generative AI, we can actually make it in a way that the bot can think to an extent and respond to the user using the knowledge materials that we have. So that sort of a thing has actually improved. So the flow map previously we used to get the user's intention and we used to see what potential responses that we can give. So we manually type those responses. For example, if the user wants to see bill information, we give the bill information and then pass the bill value as well. And then we also, if they want user wants to lodge a complaint, then we put a response like, yeah, you can contact us at this message. But now with generative AI, you don't need to explicitly mention all of those things. You can directly mention if the user puts this, respond like this. So every time the user asks the same thing, it'll be a different response. So it does not feel very monotonous. Because when you use a traditional chatbot, no matter what, how many times you ask it, you will always get the same response. Because they don't have a way to actually think on its own and give a proper response. But now with generative AI, we can make it give different options to respond. So it will actually use its own words and respond to it. So because of that, maybe the user has asked about something before, about something totally different, and then come to this point. So it will even know have that information about the previous history, the chat history. So using that chat history also, it will be able to give a response. So that in that way, For example, let's say the user has mentioned his name before as John Smith. So, and then he has mentioned that he lives in Mount Lebanon. And then now he's saying that he has a connection issue. So then there may be sometimes, for example, a connection breakdown. So then the bot has some, if the bot is fed with that information, then the bot knows that there is a connection breakdown. So if the user actually asks, why is the connection not working? The bot can actually get that knowledge content and respond to the user that there's a connection breakdown in Mount Lebanon. That's why maybe your connection's not working properly. So those sort of things can also be possible because of generative AI. Because now we have the method of importing the knowledge base instead of just keeping preset responses. So that way the bot can think to an extent and give a proper response.
So I think with that we have come to the end of our today's ConvoTalk episode. Thank you, AJ, for joining us today. I think we can continue this in our next month as well, and do some kind of, hands-on part of the uh, with how we can interact with our beta platform and our admin dashboard to show our guest how we can find our bots and all those things. Again, thank you, audience, for joining us today as well. So, if you have any questions or anything that's related to conversational design or anything that's related to marketing or anything, put it in the comment. We are happy to help. See you again soon.